This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Bear Boat Alaska. Up your DIY hunting game with one of their 37-foot adventure yachts. You and 5 of your friends can hunt, fish, set crab pots, shrimp pots, and take DIY to the next level. Bear Boat Alaska is locally owned by a Ketchikan resident who lives here year-round. Call Larry at 907-617-4542 or go to bearboatalaska.com. That's B-A-R-E boatalaska.com and tell Larry you heard about it on this podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. I have my buddy Danny Lehr. He's the co-founder of Caffeine and Kilos, and during a previous life, a high school PE teacher, which is where I know him from. I wanted to start off today, with a thank you for being on here. Appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
This here shirt says that Caffeine and Kilos was established in 2013. So you guys are coming up on 10 years, but I wanted to get like the 9-year anniversary because anybody can do a 10-year. So this is the 9-year.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's actually coming up on the 9-year. Like we say we think of the official launch as being in September because we hosted an event, and basically that event was like a launch party for the brand. But really, when the LLC was originally formed and we started selling stuff, that was in June. So it was June of 2013. So we're coming up in that big 9-year.
Yeah. If it was 10, or when it is 10, you'll get a pin.
That'll be it's exciting. You mean like a pen or a pin?
Oh, could be both, because I got one from teaching at EU for 10 years. And then I left, moved to Alaska. But
that's right.
Yeah. So did you have, or do you have like a 5-year plan or 10-year plan, or do you just kind of move in a direction? Because I know people talk about 5-year plans.
Yeah.
What do is where you're going to picture yourself either as a business or as a man, as a dude, as a person.
Yeah, the truth is I don't. And I think that's something that I should work on. But it hasn't been a priority to me. I know I have this big thing where there's things that I know I want to do. And there's a way that I've kind of set my life up schedule wise. Right. And like those things are really important to me. And I do think there's a benefit of looking 5 years in the future or 10 years in the future and saying, where do I want to be at this time? However, I also think that, I want to get the most out of today. And I want my day to day to match up with kind of what my values are and what's important to me right now. Now, if you don't look ahead in the future, that won't last, right? Like your day to day might look great. And then 5 years from now, all of a sudden you may not still like your day to day. But that doesn't really scare me because I've never been afraid to make change. If I want to do something differently, then I just do it differently, right? And so I think that when I get to a point where I'm not going to want to do some of the things that I'm doing now, or want to be in a different place, and I'll make those changes then.
Yeah.
And with big stuff, that doesn't mean I'm not like planning for the future at all. As far as like retirement and stuff like that, like I have things in place, and I'm actively doing things to try and build in that direction and be prepared for those things. But I don't have like a clear 5-year vision.
Yeah. It's like, I tell my high school students, I said, you can have a general idea, but it's not about knowing exactly what you want to do with your life, but just move in a direction to where if you do want to pivot, swivel, whatever the cool term is, you can still do that. So you don't have to know exactly and declare what your life is going to be here as a sophomore, but have some sort of direction. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I've done it before. It's not that I've never done it. I've actually a handful of times done and actually through like a guided, like at a seminar, right? That was one of the things we did is where do you want to be in 10 years from now? Where do you want to be in 5 years from now? And I remember setting up those visions and, but I never was one who I didn't take that piece of paper and tape it to my mirror and read it every single day. But what I did do is what it was good for was just kind of give me some clarity on what I want. And then from that, you kind of get some direction on like, okay, my life I'm living now, how far am I from that? And am I working in that direction? Or are my current activities not leading me in that direction, right? So it isn't necessarily because there's another way to do it, where you say, okay, here's my 5-year plan. If that's going to be my 5-year plan, then at year 4, I need to accomplish this. And at year 3, I need to accomplish this, and 2 and 1 and so on. And then you set about to do those things to make sure you're going down the right path.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. That's just not the approach that I've taken. It's more of kind of the 5 years from now is more of a just take some time to think about what you want, right? And then base your actions off of that.
There's a lot, you bring up seminars, and there's a lot of stuff. And even though you're kind of in the athletic realm, and my audience is more in the outdoors, hunting, fishing sort of, you have done both. You are a master slayer of king salmon and a coho salmon. How do you know, like, if a seminar is going to be kind of worth the money? Because there's a lot of classes, there's seminars, there's a lot of people who are trying to put stuff kind of behind that wall, and rather than give it away for free, like, here's this seminar, here's this class, here's this whatever. How do you know, or can you know if it's going to be snake oil, Ponzi scheme, or if it's going to be legit?
So the things I look for with these types of things, kind of at this point, is there's 2 things. One is, well, so for example, in that seminar where I went to, where we talked about vision and that type of stuff, that was a Craig Ballantyne, the perfect day formula type thing. And so I read his book a couple years before I went to one, right? So I read one of his books, and I applied a lot of stuff from that book to my life, called the perfect day formula. And it's really good. Like, it helps you set up your days so that you are, productive, and that you don't overlook family obligations and stuff, and that, kind of nothing slips through the cracks, and just have the most productive, successful kind of days you can. So I read that, and I applied a bunch of those things. And then I met somebody, Jay Ferrugia, who has happened to be friends with Craig. And then anyway, he introduced me to him. And so then we kind of met, and I talked to him a little bit. And anyway, and so then I ended up going to his seminars and hiring him as a business coach. So I was well familiar with the guy. It wasn't just kind of following his stuff, but I'd read his book and implemented some of the stuff he's done. And there was an introduction from somebody that I trust, and so there's plenty of evidence this guy was going to help me, and that type of thing. So yeah. I look for things like that, right? Whereas you have recommendation from somebody that you trust, and maybe some experience actually implementing some of the things they preach. And the other thing, now what I do more of, I haven't been to that type of thing in a while. What I really look for now is somewhere where there's lots of collaboration with other people who kind of have the same goals and aspirations that I do. So for example, I'm part of this group where every 3 months we meet up in Nashville, and people come from all over the country, and everyone's business owners, and we just help each other with business. We spend a day together, and, we eat breakfast, and we sit with, assigned seating at breakfast, and then we go into the main room, and we're with a different group of people. And then we're at lunch, you sit with a different group of people. And after that, and so by the end of the day, you've sat with 4 different groups of 5 or 6 people. So you kind of had some interaction with almost everyone in the room. And we just help each other out. There's some worksheets that we fill out before we go about business, and sometimes about, life and what are your kind of goals, and sometimes about business and what are you struggling with, right? And then we sit there and, all right, like, we're on this sheet now. Like, what do you guys got? We kind of take turns. Like, here's a problem I'm having. And then everyone kind of, talks about it. And we're real big on, it's called it's Gestalt thinking, right? So speaking out of experience instead of out of theory. And so, it's okay to speak out of theory as long as you're very clear and saying, like, I do not have this experience, but this seems like it's a possibility, right? But usually there's somebody there who's like, oh yeah, I have had that exact same issue, and this is how I solved the problem. Or I tried to solve the problem this way, and we crash and burn. Like, don't do that, and just kind of collaborate, and everyone helps each other out. And every time I leave with a huge notepad of things to do, or 1 page, right? 1 page of notes of the important things I want to do from that. And the thing is, nobody there is in the same business with me at all. Like, most of them, they don't do e-commerce or own gyms, right? Like, most of them do home service businesses, window washing companies, pressure washing companies, fleet washing, stuff like that. But still, like, business is business, and everybody's hiring employees and having issues with employees, and everyone's, doing local marketing or different things like that, And then, if you have some success, you might have a little excess personal capital. Like, how do you invest that? What do you do? As a business owner, what's the best use of that? And so those are the types of things that are interesting to me now, is talking to other people who have done it before or are currently doing it, and just having those conversations.
Yeah.
And so I thought, man, it's great. I thought, man, this would be great if, even better is if everybody in here was doing something, like e-commerce, right? And so there's 3 guys that I'm friends with that are all kind of at different stages of doing, e-commerce. And they're actually, 2 of them are in fitness industry. One is not. He sells apparel online, and so actually outdoor stuff. And so I talk to these guys, all 3 of them, every week or 2, probably, just kind of like, hey, what's up? What are you struggling with? And we just talk business, help each other out. And so I said, okay, so we're all going to get together in October this year. And it's the same idea. We're going to get together. We're just going to talk about, what are we struggling with? What's working for you? What's not working for you, right? And then just kind of see if we can collaborate and help each other out, and all kind of take a step forward there.
Yeah. It seems like there's a definite difference between people who are selling something that's going to benefit them versus the customer. And as a customer, I'm a lot more customer than I am entrepreneur. But when I buy a piece of equipment or gear, or a class or something like that, I'm looking for something that's there to value and benefit me, rather than something that someone threw together because they think they could charge money to it. And that's such a huge difference.
Yeah.
But, so you've been speaking at some of these things, at least a little bit. How has that been, going from Caffeine and Kilos guy to kind of speaker to?
Yeah, I'd actually like to do more of it. When we talk about like 5-year plan and stuff, that's actually something I would like to do more of. I enjoy it. I think I'm good at it. And I think that, really, I guess what else matters? And even if you're not good at it, but you enjoy it, like, you get better at it, right? Everything is a learned skill. So that's been fun. That's been interesting. Basically, just when someone approaches me and asks me to do it, I just usually say yes, because it's a lot of fun. But for me, it's been a relatively straightforward transition, I guess you would say, because that's what I have more background in than business, really, right? Like, that's my formal education is in, kinesiology, but also in pedagogy, right? Like, my master's degree is in education and cross-cultural communication, right? And so this, speaking in front of groups of people is something that's relatively natural, or I guess maybe it's not natural, just something that I've spent a lot of time doing, right? Whether it's a group of, 48 high school kids in a class, or at the gym coaching a class of, 15 or 16, adults that you're trying to teach fitness stuff to. And I've done a few times. I've kind of traveled around the country teaching weightlifting clinics to rooms full of people. And so, it is a little different when you're on a stage and they're all sitting in chairs, expecting you to teach them something. That's a little bit different. But that's okay. And it's all, like I said, everything's a learned skill. So what I did, the first one that I had was big, right? Like over 1,000 people. I thought, okay, man, like, I really wanted to nail this, And so I wrote the speech, and I had this PowerPoint put together that was like a quality one, like not just reading what I'm saying, but, complimentary slides. And then for 30 days before I gave the speech, it was the first thing I did every single day. So while my wife and kids were sleeping, I went out to the garage with my computer, and I put my computer on the plyo box there in my little garage gym. And I had a little hand clicker to go through the slides, and I gave the speech to my dog, right? To my dog in the squat rack. And it was 30 minutes. It was a 30-minute speech, right? So it took 30 minutes every time. And I did that every single morning, 7 days a week, for an entire month leading up, because I'll be damned if I go up there and don't do the best I can, right? And if I didn't, put forth my best effort, or put forth a quality speech, it wasn't going to be due to lack of effort or lack of preparation, right? So you kind of combine those two things of, it's something that I have a lot of experience doing, combined with, if it's a big thing or something that I really want to nail, and I'm not afraid to make sure to get it right.
Did you throw in some Alaska anecdotes? Either, I mean, sleeping without a tent could be a great metaphor for something, or running,
I,
running in flannel shirts, 6 miles in hiking boots.
you know what? I don't remember exactly what the antidote was, but I definitely pretended like I got hooked and flopped across the stage, like someone caught me at one point.
Nice. That's perfect.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
great.
for sure.
Yeah, it's funny that real world experiences are so, I don't know, interchangeable, and they can
Yeah.
apply in a whole bunch of different sort of things. So what have you? What else were some other things that you've done that really helped you kind of connect with different people? So when someone's listening to you, maybe talk about weightlifting or something like that, they can also say, "Oh, this is going to apply to me in a different realm." I think the outdoor fitness and the outdoor hunting, fishing is such they're so similar. You use different
Yeah.
specifics, different gear, but it's pretty much the same.
I think a lot about when I was a kid and my dad would take us backpacking. That's all my dad wants to do, by the way, is like go do things outside. And so we would, we'd go skiing in the winter. And I was like, oh, you can walk now. That's good because then you can take ski lessons in the morning so that he could go, him and his mom and him and my mom could go ski. And then in the afternoon, they would, have to hang out with us. And then it'd be that. And then also every summer we would go on a, 5 or 6 day long, not crazy distance, but, for like an 8-year-old, pretty far. We'd do like whatever, 30 miles off the John Muir Trail through Yosemite and, up at, over 10,000 feet elevation a lot of times. And, so it wasn't exactly easy sledding all the time either, carried our own packs, carried our own gear. He carried a little more of the group gear than we did, but, it was definitely, and we're loaded up pretty good. And so I think about those things a lot because I remember skiing, and he would, he'd push us sometimes, right? We'd go, not over, like he wouldn't push us over, but he'd push us to do things that maybe we were scared of. The time for the bunny hill's over, let's go. We'd go up to the top and it wouldn't be some crazy thing. Sometimes it would, but a lot of times it wouldn't be. But it was definitely a little more than I was prepared to take on. And I remember like saying like, "Hey, Dad, like that's too steep. I don't know what to do. Like, what do you want me to do here?" And he said, "Well, like, you can always take off your skis and slide down on your butt." I thought, well, that's not a real option. Like, you're not giving me a real option here. He said, "Well, or just make bigger turns." I was like, "Okay, all right, but you got to stay here. Like, I want him like that way. If I like fall, he like watches me. I don't know." So he stayed at the top and I just went down, taking these big turns going down this hill that was, way too steep or that I thought was beyond my capabilities until you get about halfway down and he goes flying by me. Yeehaw. I'm like, oh, geez. Now I feel like I'm up there all on my own. But there's life lessons in that experience, right? As far as like, yeah, maybe you think something's, above your skill level, beyond your skill level. So just go a little slower. There's nothing wrong with taking on that task, but just taking it on one step at a time. You don't have to point your skis straight downhill and just go as fast as you can until you crash. Maybe you just, okay, well, like one bit at a time. I'm only going to go 10 feet down this slope at a time, one turn at a time. And then he goes flying by you and you're up there all by yourself now, right? And so, okay, well, what do? Well, you can't just stop. Like just stopping, quitting was not an option. Like it's not an option. Like you just got to do it, even if it's uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
that same thing happened with backpacking a lot is, we'd be going up this hill and we're going up these switchbacks and like, it doesn't really matter how you feel because you're not going to sleep here tonight. Like that's not going to, we got to get over this pass and then get down to the other side to where we're going to be sleeping that night because we've got another 2 miles to go today because we've got another 6 miles to go the next day. And we're 20 miles from the car. And so there is no like quitting option. There is no tapping out, right? Like, this is what you're doing, and the only way out is through.
Yeah.
And so those experiences really, I think, I didn't notice it at the time, but as and just in the past couple of years, as I've been doing more interviews and podcasts, people ask about my childhood, ask about different experiences from my childhood and what my parents did for a living and how did I think that affected, whatever, it's stuff like that it's great. It's like therapy. You know what I mean? And I was like, I never thought of this, but shit, actually, my dad like hung me out to dry on more than one occasion, but out of love. One more little fun tidbit is we were up right by Half Dome like at the shoulder, like right by the cables. And I was like 9 or 10 years old. And my brother's 3 years older, and him and my dad. The plan was we're gonna head up to the top. We're right here. And this was on like the last day of this 5 or 6 day backpacking trip through Yosemite. And I was like, nope, not going. Nope, that looks, well, I don't feel like dying today. I'm not going up there. And my dad just looked at me and said, okay, no problem. You can stay here with our packs. And then they just left me there and they went up, and I don't know how old I was. I mean, I was for sure not in high school. Like I was in junior high or younger, maybe 10 years old or 8 years old or something, and just kind of sat down there with their stuff and waited. And of course, they're gone for about 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh man, here by myself. I wish I was risking my life on the cables at that point. But yeah, so those things definitely had an impact.
Do you think this is one of those roads that you don't really need to go down to or go down, but do you think you turn out the same way if you wouldn't have had those physical outdoor challenges growing up?
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plans shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
Man, I don't know, because I think that there's a few things that definitely had a big impact on how I am now, and one of those is wrestling in high school. It's kind of the same situation. Like you just don't, like, you can't really just quit. I mean, you can, but like when you lose, like you get the shit kicked out of you, right? Like that's not fun. And so you're just kind of in it until it's over. And I think that definitely had a huge impact on me and different experiences as an adult. And so did those childhood experiences apply to that? I mean, I think so. I mean, there's no way to know, but I don't know how they wouldn't, right? Just as far as those kind of things of like, like they're hiking up the side of this mountain, and you can stop like for like 5 minutes, but my dad got all these things that I never realized. Just in the past couple of years, I've been like repeating again, like on these things. But you say stuff like like we'd get up in the morning and we wouldn't eat breakfast. We got to get, a mile under our belt. Then we would stop and eat because, it's like, hey, to rest is not to conquer. Hey, burning daylight, let's go. Right? Like the trail, she awaits us. Right? Like, all these types of things that just, I just assumed that everybody's dad said shit like that until I realized that maybe they don't.
Have you found that a lot of the people that you meet with business-wise did have upbringings that were similar to that, and that there was some sort of challenge or something that kind of brought that out of them and maybe nurtured that get after it spirit?
It's interesting. I actually haven't thought of that. I'm kind of thinking now, thinking to the people I know in business, everyone was all over the place. There's people that had, terrible childhoods as far as like, were like homeless for a big part of their childhood, and the only father they knew was the one that showed up once a year, in order to beat them, types of a thing. And so, but then there's other people who, kind of like myself, had a pretty happy childhood, parents that still married, and definitely always loved me, and that type of stuff, right? That's interesting, but I think that I see people from all over different backgrounds and experiences and all that, which is encouraging too, right? I've said a few times, like, everything is a learned skill, and business is definitely the same, falls in that same category, so it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't have to have, been a poor immigrant in order to be successful in business. You also don't have to, have parents that loved you or they even knew. I mean, shit, my grandfather was very successful, and he was extremely poor as a child. I mean, I'm talking like they were in Texas at one point. His parents had to put him and his brother and his sister had to put him in an orphanage because they couldn't afford to feed him, right? And then for like 6 months or a period of time, and I think it was less than a year, but it's more than a couple months, whatever. Anyway, then a couple months later, they, had work again or whatever, and they were able to go pick up their kids, I mean, that type of thing is just wild to me, right? And then they were migrant farm workers. They went all from Texas, all up California into Oregon, and then back down through. And that was his childhood growing up. Is every couple months they were moving down the road in order to whatever crops were in season. Until he was, I think it was right before high school, 8th grade or something like that, is when his dad got a steady job, and he lived in the same place for a couple of years. And so that was his childhood. And then he ended up going and starting business and running a successful company, and, buying some land and putting up properties, and had, a dozen or so, commercial rental properties around town, and doing pretty well, so, now that, that same question, right? Would he have done those same things and been as successful if he had a cushy childhood? I mean, I'm not sure. But it's definitely, I think having gone through some challenges helps, because when things get hard, the worst thing you can do is quit.
Yeah. You can't replicate that sort of hardship and that sort of figuring out where you're at and what you're made of. I remember when there was a salmon filleting episode in which if you're telling him, if you're going to do a bad job, you might as well finish it. But those sort of things, like, you don't get that sort of, mindset if everything is great. But I guess some people do. But you got some of those sort of things to figure out kind of where you at and where you fall in this. And so if you don't have experiences that are pushing you, you have to kind of find or cultivate them.
And maybe that was the thing, right? Like, maybe I grew up with parents that, are still married and love me and everything, but, at least they like took me backpacking and skiing and made me do hard things that way, But yeah, something, I don't know. I don't know that I've always been this way. I think I have for a while, but man, I just really enjoy, to a certain degree, like being miserable with others, and like the hard work that comes along with that, like when I went out ice fishing with Dan and those guys up in Minnesota, before we left, they said, okay, it looks like it's going to be lows of -27 and highs of 7. And I thought, okay, well, here we go, let's do this thing. And then, the last day we're trying to leave, and these 2x4s are iced in, and I see the youngest guy there, it's like young 20s, early 20s, and he's got this chisel and he's trying to get him out, and he was really struggling, and I was just like chomping at the bit. I'm just like, let me get at that. And, and so I was so pumped to finally get the shovel and just be able to get in there and just like, because I thought he was struggling, I was like, that looks hard, and like someone has to do it, right? Like, we're not leaving those things in there. I know we're not. Like, I know we're not leaving those in there. And so someone's got to get him out. He's struggling. Let me take a rip at that shit. Like, let me at it, And it was so fun. Anyway, but it was hard. It was hard work. But like, what do you do? Like, we're not leaving until those things are out, and we got to get on the road. So
yeah.
Anyway, that type of thing sometimes, like a little labor, a little hard work, especially when you're dealing with others, right? Being miserable by yourself kind of sucks, but when you're miserable with others, one more little tidbit on that's kind of funny. Like, even things like this, complete opposite end of the spectrum as far as like hardship wise, is my wife and I and another couple, really good friends of ours, we go like to this winery that we're members of, and there was we were talking about like quitting our memberships at this place. We're gonna go one last time, like give it a shot. And we go there and it was a shit show. It was windy and we were miserable. And then like there's like food, but like the line for the food, it was like, oh, we're gonna buy like 45 minutes to get this thing. And so like we just left in the middle of it and then like drove, it's like 40 minutes away. And we were there for like 20 minutes. And I loved it. And then we just going to dinner at the same place in town that we go to dinner all the time. And my favorite part of the evening was when we went there and it was a total shit show. I loved it. Like I loved that we drove all the way out there to be blown around in the wind and to wait in line for 10 minutes before just giving away our food tickets to somebody else and getting the hell out of there. And I think that made the night. The best part of it was that it like completely collapsed in front of us because we're all in it together. Like it was the four of us and we were just laughing about it. Like it was funny. Like it was funny how bad of an experience it was, you know? And I really enjoy that.
So how important is that to be around people who have those same similar goals or drive, or it might not be in the exact same, realm or something like that, but how important is it to be around people who encourage that or able to get those sort of things out?
Well, I think it's a mindset thing, right? Necessarily more than like a necessarily goals and that type of thing. It's can you roll with the punches, or can you make the best out of situations, or do you, when things could have just as easily in that experience it could have been a bad thing, right? Oh, this is terrible, and complaining about stuff, or just kind of whatever. It just this is what's happening, and we're involved in it, and whatever. And that, again, that's like such a funny example because it's like the most like privileged bad experience you can think of, but still, like honestly, it's pretty shitty. We drove like 40 minutes just to like Toronto, drive back 10 minutes later, right? Like it was for nothing, right?
Yeah.
Especially got kids, like you only get babysitters so often, like that's, but that's the whole thing, is with a different group of people, it would have been an entirely different experience. Or with people with more of a kind of negative, mindset with it, would have been a whole different experience, And back to that ice fishing trip, dude, like one day there's 40-mile-an-hour winds. It was snowing. Like you could not see 30 feet. Like I'm not exaggerating. Like you couldn't see 30 feet. And, every time you had to pee or whatever, you go outside, like go to open the door and like it was ice shut. Like you have to like get your shoulder into it, and then the wind would catch and fly, but you had to use like two hands. You had to use one hand to like catch the door so it wouldn't swing open and like break, And one time I'm trying to close the door and you got to slam them because there's all the ice in the way, and then the handle came off and like this, and again, like that whole thing. But the entire time, you know what? Like we're all like, you're just laughing about it. Like it was just, the weather was so terrible. It was a joke, right? Because we weren't, we're in the middle of this lake, whatever, and there was no way out. But, it wasn't, you never felt like you're in danger. I mean, there's a freaking heater in the ice house, right? So like, it's fine. You're in the, but, again, different group of people, sitting there, like, it would have been an entirely different experience if they had kind of the mindset of, this sucks and the weather's terrible, and, the doors were iced, like we can't get out or we can't get back in or whatever, But everyone was kind of like, all right, like taking a stride. Here we are. Like, gotta go fill up the generator. Like, whose turn is it to go like brave this thing to, And it was never like we weren't drawing straws. It's kind of like, generator needs gas. I'm like, all right, I'll go this time. Someone was always willing to do it. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that mindset of just kind of, rolling with the punches sounds like you don't have any input. Like you definitely do, but it's not letting a bad situation determine your mood.
Yeah. So I got some
life is what you make it.
Perfect. That's a good one. Yeah. There's so many cliches, but I mean, it makes sense on some of them end up contradicting each other, but those
are my favorite.
They're right. Yeah.
My favorite are the ones that are redundant, like it is what it is, that type of thing.
Yeah. So in closing here, what's next? What's the next thing you're looking to tackle, maybe specifically in general, whatever?
Well, the next main thing is in Caffeine and Kilos, I'll say. We have some kind of things in the works that I think are gonna be really good. Just as far as like expanding the business. and kind of adding some different layers to things. I'm really excited about that. So that's kind of something I'm really looking forward to, is just kind of taking another step with that, kind of getting that to the next level. And then honestly, I'm also really excited about, like I mentioned a few times, got these kids. Like my oldest is she's gonna be in fourth grade, and my youngest is gonna be in kindergarten. And man, shit, that sure goes by fast. And so trying to make sure to enjoy that as well. And people ask me, like, what are you afraid of, or what do you not want to happen, or what do you want, whatever. And even that, like, what do you want, like, in the next few years? What I want is, it's more what I don't want, right? And what I don't want is to, look back, 5 years from now, and realize that my kids are grown, don't want anything to do with me now, hate me because they're in high school, whatever. And this time that I wasted, that's really important. And so, as much as I am extremely driven personally to be successful and have success in my business, I think the most regret I could possibly feel in life would be to look back 10 years from now and my kids are out of the house, and I didn't spend the time with them when they were here.
That's good, man. That's a great closer. Appreciate it. Thanks, man, for being on here. Always great to talk to you. Excited to get the house built up here so we can have you back up for some more Alaska challenges.
Dude, I can't get enough pictures of that house in progress, by the way.
Oh, it's going to be sweet, man. So excited.
Also, one of my favorite parts of going to Alaska, right, is two things. Number one, to a certain degree, because I don't live there, because I only go for periods of time, I love when it's rainy and shitty, because that's just because we're in it together and it's part of the experience. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing. When we didn't have poles for the tent, that was my favorite night there. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I almost cut off my finger, and you cut off your pocket as a Band-Aid. And we used the for external use only hand sanitizer to clean it out. It was perfect. It made the night, made the day. I absolutely love that. And the second thing is eating the fish hearts, So I'm ready to get back up there and get some more of that fresh sushi in me.
It's been a while. It's been a while now. It's been 5-6 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, man. Oh, more than that, I think. I think that the first time I went, I don't think I had any kids yet. I was like 9 years ago or whatever. And the second time, I think Maddie was like 1, or maybe she was 1 or something like that. I don't know, So anyway, it was probably like 7 years ago and 8 years ago.
Yeah, that may have been maybe before I moved up. I don't know. Yeah,
they're there before you moved up. You were still living in California both times I went, and then obviously had a good time going up for the wedding too.
Yeah, crazy.
Different experience.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it. Glad to have you on here, and always good to talk to you.
Awesome. Great seeing you, Jeff.
See you, man.